I'm Dan Couvret, the publisher of Family Lawyer Magazine and DivorceMag.com. And this is part of a series of interviews I'm doing with family lawyers. And today I have the pleasure of speaking with Florida family lawyer Kristen Goss. We're going to be covering a wide variety of divorce-related subjects for people, particularly from Florida, who might be thinking about or going through divorce. Kristen is a founder and managing partner of KWG Legal and Mediation Services in Fort Lauderdale. She has been named the top lawyers by Fort Lauderdale Illustrated, and she focuses her practice in the area of divorce, child custody, time sharing, adoption, surrogacy, dependency, wills, trust, probate, and guardianship. And for somebody who's thinking about or going through divorce, it's great to work with an attorney like Kristen, who has a variety of experience. Kristen, thank you very much for taking the time to talk with me today.
Thank you so much, Dan, for having me.
So let's start at the beginning. That would be filing for a divorce. Can you tell the listeners and watchers what they should be doing if somebody is going to file for divorce, or if they're the recipient of a decree for or a divorce papers?
Sure, Dan. I'd like to start with a little story, if you don't mind.
Sure.
I know that divorce can be extremely difficult and, very fearful for a lot of people. For example, let's take a mom, Samantha, we'll call her name, and she has two kids. She's been married to Joe for over 17 years. Their kids are 15 and 13, and she's been a stay-at-home mom pretty much the majority of their marriage. And Joe files for a divorce, and she's served, and she's scared. What does she do? She does not know anything about the finances. Joe is a successful businessman, and it's a very scary and challenging time for her. Let's take a father who broke up with his girlfriend of 2 years and hasn't seen his son in 6 months, and his name is on the birth certificate. So he's definitely claiming that he's the biological father, but the mother does not want him to have any time with his son. And so what does he do in that situation? And so these are some, common questions and things that people come to me as potential clients because they have a lot of questions, they have a lot of fears, and it's important for me to really meet them where they are. And so to answer your question, if someone were to be served with a divorce paper, for example, what do they do? The first thing, of course, would be to come to someone like me, a family law attorney, who can provide them with options. And what I normally do is provide them with several options so that they are educated and know what is out there and how they would be able to be helped. So there could be the litigation route, there could be the mediation route, there could be the collaborative law route, which I always promote and suggest depending on the circumstances. It's not for everyone, but in most cases, if it can be done that way and resolved outside of court, that's always the best alternative.
Right. So you mentioned mediation and the collaborative approach to divorce. Maybe you can just say a little bit more about what those are, and is it less expensive to go that route than possibly to litigate your divorce?
Sure. So regarding the collaborative law route, what classifies as collaborative law, you would have both parties or participants, is what they're called in the collaborative law process, who are represented by an attorney. So I would represent, let's say, the husband, and the other collaboratively trained attorney would represent the wife, and we would represent them in their legal interests and do everything necessary, but everything outside of court. We oftentimes bring on other professionals, for example, mental health professionals, if there are child-related issues that need to be addressed, as well as financial neutrals if there are assets and debts that need to be discussed. How is that going to be divided? And so we are a team and we work together to resolve the issues. Of course, I, as the attorney, would focus on the legal interests of my clients, and then the mental health professional on the child-related issues and the time-sharing and co-parenting issues that the parents need to resolve, and then the financial neutral, of course, the financial aspects of the case. And yes, it is, in most cases, more time efficient. It's less costly because, we're just really focusing on, streamlining things, and you have the various professionals and experts focusing on their area of expertise, and you
Right.
have everybody working for you. So it can be less expensive than litigation.
I've spoken with you a number of times, and I really have the sense that if I were somebody going through a divorce and I came into your office, it kind of feels like you put your arm around me and you'd support me. I get that feeling like instantaneously from when you started, saying how you take care of clients. You really understand the deep personal, emotional feeling. This is not just filling out some forms and papers, is it?
No, it is not. And I tell people all the time, I can do that. And it's funny, I was speaking with someone the other day, and uh, they kind of wanted to know, okay, what are my legal rights? And I said, for sure, we can get into that, and I can talk to you about that all day and night. That's what I do day in and day out. But I want to know what's important to you, because each family is different, each family has different dynamics, and their interests are different as well. And whatever interests you, whatever reasons you came to me, whatever goals you have in mind, I want to know that from beginning to end, so that we're on the same page, and you feel heard in the process. Because I feel like oftentimes, sometimes people just need to get things off their chest. It is, like you said, Dan, a very emotional time,
Right.
and we are emotional people. We're humans. Family law is a human aspect of the law. And so you cannot separate one from the other. Yes, I will have to address their legal interests, and there's only so much I can do as far as addressing the emotional side, but I am also a person. They are a person, and we need to have that personal touch and connection to make sure that we're on the same page and to make sure that they feel heard.
Absolutely. One of the other options that I know about is unbundled services. Can you tell me a little bit about that and how divorcing people can use that service with you?
Sure. So oftentimes, you hear this all the time. Attorneys are expensive, and that can be. And depending on a person's financial situation, unbundled services could be something as an alternative. And how that works is, let's say someone wants to file for a divorce, but of course there's a lot of paperwork, as you said earlier, Dan, that is involved in that. And while you can go online and get the forms and fill them out, things have to be done correctly. And so the better way to do it is to go to a professional who does that day in and day out. They know how to file things, they know what needs to be included in the paperwork. And so I will definitely take on that role. And while I'm not the attorney of record, as they call it, I would be preparing the paperwork for the client. I would be providing them with legal advice so that they are not in the dark from beginning to end. And so whatever paperwork needs to be filed, I will prepare that for them and file it if they want me to file it for them. But I am not, quote unquote, the attorney of record.
Right. I've worked with family lawyers for 25 years, and I often hear them, they often tell me that they get a lot of clients who have started out on their own and tried to do the forms and the filing, and they just, it's a lot more complicated than most people think. And they also don't know the subtle intricacies and the difference it makes to go this way as opposed to that way. And this is the sort of direction you're giving them with the unbundled service help, I'm assuming.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Hmm.
So let's just talk about what's probably the most important issue in divorce. If you have children, it's your children. Time you get to spend with them, and perhaps even paternity might be an issue. Just tell us a little bit about how you prepare your clients to resolve these child-related issues? What do you do?
Absolutely. So I will ask them, what are their goals? What are their concerns? What are their interests when it comes to their children? And oftentimes for paternity cases, the father just wants to have equal time with his child or children. Um, for the mom, it could be, they're scared. They don't want to relinquish control because, they don't know how that's going to look. And
Right.
so we kind of take a dive into that. But at the end of the day, I tell clients this all the time. It's about your children. Your children are 50% of mom, 50% of dad, and whatever you say about the other parent, they internalize that. And so make sure you remember that, whether they are a baby and not even a year old or they are 16. I've seen too many times where kids are placed in the middle, most times not intentionally, but it does happen and it has a significant negative impact on the children. And so, if mom and dad throughout the process can remember at the end of the day, we may disagree on things, but it's how we handle it and how we communicate with each other for the sake of our children, because at the end of the day, they are part of both of us. And so, we want to make sure that they feel that they belong and they don't have to choose, and they have that confidence to know that I'm mommy's child and I'm daddy's child, and that's fine.
Right. Well, that was the intention when we started Divorce Magazine 26 years ago, was to provide people with information to set them on that course, that your children are critical. If you focus on your children, you're going to be a lot further ahead than obviously using them as, uh, to help you get what you want in the divorce. No, help the children is the goal here. And
Hmm.
so what about child support and alimony? How is that determined in Florida?
Child support is based on a number of things, and it's a formula for the most part, but it's based on, amongst other things, the parent's income, if anyone's paying health insurance for the child or the children, the number of overnights each of the parents has, if there is a daycare expense like for VPK, or if the child is not school age yet, who is paying the monthly expense for that. So that's something that's calculated. If it's a divorce matter and alimony is a factor, alimony is also something that needs to be considered within the child support calculations. However, if there is no child or children that are part of the picture and it's just alimony, then there's no like formula per se that you would come up with and say, okay, your income is this, your income is this, and this is the number. Oftentimes, it's a lot of negotiation that that's involved in coming up with alimony. It could be a lump sum, or it could be a monthly amount. It really depends on the circumstances and what the clients are comfortable with.
And do you sometimes bring in outside professionals to help you determine what those values are? Who would you bring in to help in that case?
Absolutely. I would bring in the financial neutral, someone like a financial advisor, a CPA, a certified financial planner. We have a whole bunch of people that we utilize on the team because, again, they are the experts when it comes to the finances, and we want to make sure that every aspect of things are considered. What are the tax consequences? What is this going to look like moving forward? How is it going to impact things? So we want to get the whole picture.
Right. I know your preference is to work with clients to either mediate their divorce or work in the collaborative model without going to court. But what if you do have to go to court? Can you give us a sense of what that's like in Florida and when you might need to do that?
Absolutely. So, in order for something to be collaborative, both of the parties have to agree. So, if one side or both sides don't want to do it, then filing in court is an option. And how that works generally speaking, like when we're talking about divorce and in particular equitable distribution, how the assets and debts are divided, the presumption is equal. So whatever was acquired during the marriage would be equally split
Right.
between husband and wife or wife and wife, whomever. Um, However, that's just the presumption. And, there are a lot of things and factors that go into play to really determine how that is to play out. But oftentimes, motions can be filed if you want to be heard on a particular issue, if the parties aren't seeing eye to eye and you want the judge to make a decision. So we can definitely do that. And eventually, the parties would have to go to mediation. And mediation is a good faith effort that both parties, oftentimes attend to resolve whatever outstanding issues there are.
Right.
And I would say 90% of the time, things are resolved in mediation, opposed to going to trial. If there is an issue or issues that need to be addressed and aren't resolved at mediation, then of course we would take it to the court, take it to the judge, and go to trial. I would present arguments. The other attorney, if there is another attorney on the other side, would present arguments, testimony, witnesses, and then the judge will make a final decision.
Right. I suspect that whether you end up in court or not has a lot to do with the attorneys that you choose to work with. And you're
Yes.
pro mediation and collaborative, and so there's probably a less of a chance you're going to end up in court with somebody like you. Do you think that holds true?
I think that it to some extent. Again, the attorneys provide the clients with options, and it's up to the client as to what route they take. If you're dealing with an attorney like me who is focused more so on the family and what's best for the family, especially when children are involved, then more often than not, it's going to be a situation where we're resolving outside of court.
Right. So, Kristen, I want to ask you about prenups because more and more, I'm hearing people getting prenup agreements, and I thought that it was more for people of wealth. Do you do prenups, and can you tell us a little bit about why they're becoming more popular, do you think?
Absolutely. Thank you for asking that question. So, I would recommend that, of course, you reach out and see if it's something that is beneficial. Oftentimes, people are getting married at older ages, and they may have, for example, a business that they've acquired, and they want to make sure that that business remains in their family. Personally, let's say it's a family-owned business.
Right.
And but so by law, kind of a little bit of a state planning aspect in it. But by law, if your spouse dies, there's a presumption that 50% would go to the spouse, and if there are minor children involved, the other 50% would go to the minor children. So if you don't want the 50% to go to the spouse or all of it, if there are no minor children, then prenup is something that is definitely recommended, especially if it's, again, a business that you've acquired because of your family and you want that to remain in the family. And then, of course, a post-nup, I say prenup for pre-marriage,
Right.
post-nup after marriage. So.
Right. Right. So people do file even after they get divorced. I mean, get a prenup, a postnuptial agreement. It's because things have changed in their relationship, or what would be the reason to get a postnuptial agreement?
Absolutely. So I can take my personal scenario. I got married at 23,
Right.
and I was still in law school at the time. I had nothing. So someone asked me, did you get a prenup? I'm like, why? He didn't get one and I didn't get one because I didn't have anything at the time. But, fast forward just about 14 years later, I have my business. He has his business and his company, and we're both thriving. So, things change as
Right.
you mature and grow older. And so, yeah, that would be a reason why someone would have a post nup after getting married. because
Right.
of the situation changing.
And from your experience, if somebody has a post-nup or a prenuptial agreement, in the event, that possible event that they do get a divorce, does it make things easier? Does it help sort things out quicker and with less pain and stress and money?
Absolutely, for a number of reasons. Again, in the unfortunate event someone passes away, things are taken care of, and you don't have to go through probate or guardianship or any of that. So that's one thing. And then in the event you get a divorce, unfortunate event that does happen, then things are outlined as long as it's done properly. And I would recommend going to an attorney that focuses in that area.
Great. You have any final words of advice or do's or don'ts for people who are thinking about contemplating going through a divorce in Florida?
Just remember that Florida is a no fault state. And so it really doesn't matter what your spouse did or didn't do. Um, it's really about equitable, what's equitable, what's fair. Um, things can be considered when it comes to alimony as far as fault, if you want to title it that way. But yeah, and there is no presumption. I want to put that out there of equal time sharing.
Uh-huh.
That is a misconception. So I want to make sure to say that.
Right. And I'll say it because you didn't. You would be wise to work with somebody, a lawyer who specializes in family law, that they're focus their practice on family law, because it makes a huge difference. As I said, I've been working with family lawyers for 25, 26 years, and I just hear so many stories about somebody who started out with a lawyer who does 20 different things, criminal,
Hmm.
real estate, and a
Hmm.
little dabble in family law. Boy, a professional like Kristen can help you in so many ways that you won't even know. Um, so I recommend working with Kristen or somebody who's focused their practice. You can learn more about Kristen, by the way, at her website. It's kwglaw.net. Kristen, I want to thank you very much for taking the time to talk with me today. It's been a pleasure, and I'd recommend you to anybody who's thinking about getting a divorce in Fort Lauderdale. I think you'd do a great job.
Thank you so much, Dan. I thank you for the opportunity.
Take care.